Hello and welcome back. We're back with yet again another EDH deck tech video. It is June of 2025. The Final Fantasy set is right around the corner here, and it's Pride Month. So I'm enjoying this month going through all of my current roster of decks, and we're on to one of my two Rakdos decks. The other one being Karazikar. Probably later down the line, near the end of all this, I might do a re-upload, like a current deck list for Karazikar, because I did her the eyeball about a year ago. So what we have here is Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls. This is a precon commander, which if you're familiar with my channel, you know is very unusual to see me playing a precon commander. I usually stick with the unusual, the underdog, the rarity commanders that have a harder time competing. Specifically, it is awkward for me to have a commander that has card advantage built into it. That seems very unusual for me. But I really like this demon. I made a mistake when this card was being spoiled. I wanted this card I knew on spoiler season, so I pre-ordered this card. What I should have done was pre-order the whole damn precon because I didn't think that the precon was actually going to be as good as it was. Lo and behold, this entire precon, most precons printed in the last few years have been insanely powerful. So most of the cards, some of the cards in my deck are actually just from the precon. But now I am a Grixis and a Rakdos and a mono red fan. All of the decks I'm going to be showcasing this month are of those color combinations. So I just finished my mono-color decks. We're moving on to some multi-color decks, and then we'll wrap up with the Grixis and maybe another showing of Karazikar. Let's go ahead and talk about Valgavoth. I like to call this the Spaghetti Moth, which is weird. It is an Elder Demon, but in most of the artwork renditions of Valgavoth, it is some kind of moth demon. So you would think it'd be like a demon insect, but it's not. This particular artwork looks like a giant pile of chaotic cryptid spaghetti. So, quickly, I like to call this the Spaghetti Moth. But this is Valgavoth, 4 mana, 4/4 Elder Demon, Flying Ward, pay to life. And the important part of him, why we are actually running him, is he is a card advantage. On an opponent's turn, if they lose life, I can put a counter on Valgavoth and draw a card. So if they, on their turn, try to target remove him and pay the ward of paying 2 life, I would put a counter on him and draw a card before the removal spell is allowed to resolve. Now, the precon was phenomenally powerful. It was exceptionally, like, the cards in that deck, just out of box, were already very good. There's a lot of, and of course being a precon means that the EDH rec means that the recommended cards, if you do research for a Valgavoth deck, you're going to see a lot of the precon cards automatically showing up. So it dilutes unique interactions. It makes it harder to find those interactions. But, again, if you know me and my channel, I take the weird approach on most things, and that's what we did here. We are still doing Valgavoth shenanigans, but we are doing a little bit of the ginger spice to it. We're adding a little bit of shenanigans and a dash of instant speed chaos. Now, I will go ahead and stick him off to the side, but just to reiterate why the cards in this deck function the way they do, is we want an opponent to lose life on their turn. So most of the precon cards and a lot of the Valgavoth decks I've seen are pain-based decks where they have a permanent in play that repeatedly burns over time. Some kind of upkeep effect where opponents take damage on their upkeep is a common trope in this style of deck. And I do have a few of those effects still in the deck, one of the ones I felt were the best of the best. But the rest of my deck is more of a control deck. There is a gigantic complement of instant speed, pseudo-burn spells with utility. So let's stick him over here, and we'll point out the cards as we go. Let's start with creatures. This is somewhere between a bracket 2 and a bracket 3 deck. There are some game changers in here, which makes it confusing. Orcish Bowmasters is perfect for what this deck wants to do. At the very worst case scenario, with Valgavoth in play, we can flash out the Bowmasters to poke somebody for 1 and draw a card off Valgavoth. But Bowmasters is a game changer. So by including this card in this deck, it technically makes it ineligible to be bracket 2, but this is perfectly flavorful and synergistic with what the deck wants to do, so it's in the deck. We'll talk about the bracket system more as we go. I'm not a fan of the system. I understand its purpose, but it is corrupt. But this is a type of card that is phenomenal for what the deck wants to do, and I would recommend you play it. We have Gleeful Arsonist. This was in the pre-con with Valgavoth. She has Undying, which means if she dies, she comes back with a +1/+1 counter, assuming there was no counters on her at the time of her death. What more importantly is whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, this creature does damage equal to its power to that player. So if you give her equipment, or if she has a +1/+1 counter from Undying, it will be more than just 1 damage. But with our commander, if an opponent casts a non-creature spell on their turn, it will trigger and allow us to draw a card. Next up, we have Rug of Smothering. Oh boy, everyone just loves to be smothered, don't they? Memes aside, this is a fantastic card and also a very dangerous card. This is a great way of keeping a Storm player in check. 3 mana, 1/3 flyer is actually really good to have a nice little attacker because there are some equipment in the deck, but anytime a player casts a spell, they lose 1 life per the amount of spells they've cast that turn. So if someone casts 5 spells in a turn, they're going to take 5 + 4 + 3 + 2 + 1 damage total. It is a very big effect off of a small body. But more importantly, this is a good flyer. Like, you can just attach equipment on this, and they attack for some value. It is loss of life, not damage, by the way. Mogis, God of Slaughter. If you are a fan of my channel, you've been around for the past 15 years since my channel's been posting EDH decks, you know we're a fan of Mogi. One of my oldest, and I believe to date the current most popular video on my channel, was my old Mogis God of Slaughter group slug Punisher style deck. This was actually in the precon, not this version of Mogis, but Mogis was in the precon. I had to get this one because of this little tidbit down here just saying LOL in the flavor text, and this funny... This is the eye-rolling kind of card. It's like the SpongeBob counterspell or Days with Mr. Krabs on it. It's just silly. And this is humorous enough that I really wanted it in this deck, and it's perfect. This is an example of a perfect follow-up play to Valgavoth. We don't want this in play first. We want this in play to go around the turn cycle, so your opponents don't instantly fear losing life. Because if you push Mogis in play first, they're going to know, even though you're going to do more damage already, they're going to know that that's interacting here. But if he's in play first, and then you put Mogis in play, it will go around and start triggering your Valgavoth, and you will at least get a card before people start removing your stuff. Going on down, we have Cardor Doom Scourge. A little bit of goad, not really goad. The reason he's in the deck is because of this last bit down here, which is a static effect. His Enter the Battlefield trigger is what most people know and realize. It is basically pseudo-goading everything, even creatures that come into play that turn and gain haste. But what we care about is if an attacking creature dies, it causes a bleed, which means that will trigger our commander. This is what this deck is sneakily doing. There are pain effects, obvious pain effects, like reoccurring effects like the Rug and the Gleeful Arsonist. But this is more of a passive pain effect that is easily forgotten by the opponents. Most people do not like killing Cardor because most black decks have some reanimation trick to get it back into play. But if you just let it sit back, that little bleed effect right there is actually going to get you a few extra cards. This is Sheoldred of the Apocalypse. If you can't read this, let me get into some clacky... I'm not going to do that. Sheoldred is a terrifying card. 4 mana. She is a 4/5, I believe it is, Menace and Death Touch. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. You never attack, you never block, you never risk killing your Sheoldred. What happens is whenever you, the controller Sheoldred, draw a card, you gain 2 life per card. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life per card. So again, a perfect follow-up. Put Valgavoth in play. If he survives the turn cycle, snap Sheoldred in play. At the worst case scenario, you'll go to the next opponent, they'll draw 2, lose 2, and you'll put a counter here and draw a card. Sheoldred tends to die very quick. She is a very obvious threat in this deck. We have Sir Conrad the Grim. This is another card that is just like the Cardor. He is a passive bleed effect. We're not really here to abuse Sir Conrad, but he just happens to burn people randomly on their turn or whenever a creature dies or goes to the graveyard. The mill effect is cute. It is a late game mana sink if we really need it. We don't usually need it, but he is here just to be a removal bait, kind of, but also as a filler to passively burn people when they forget he's there. Going on down, we have Karazikar, the Eyeball, my other commander in the Rakdos variety. I love Karazikar. Again, this is a card that you can use to goad and do some shenanigans with. But more importantly, if you do goad a creature from an opponent, they are forced to attack with it, which would then trigger this ability where they lose a life and draw a card, and you lose a life and draw a card. But if your commander Valgavoth is in play with Karazikar, then you'll actually draw a second card off of the opponent losing life. Going on down, we have Barrage Taunter. Again, this was, I believe, in this precon. I can't remember if this was in one of the other precons or the actual Valgavoth precon. But this is perfect for what the deck wants to do. It is a activation to burn. So you can do this once per turn cycle to burn an opponent during their turn. But there's a few effects in the deck that make this a terrifying card. Of course, we have things like Blasphemous Act. We have a few things like a Chandra's Ignition, damage manipulation cards. To really take advantage of a card like this. We don't have Stuffy Doll in here, but Barrage Taunter is fantastic. Going on down, we have the Pervert. Sazin is a card that I have consistently tried to make as a commander over many, many years. Originally released in Champions of Kamigawa, 5 mana, 6/5 is a fantastic body. Giving everyone a Sign in Blood on their upkeep makes you think Group Hug. But being that he has no evasion, no defensive abilities, not even Death Touch or Flying, none of that. This is just a really hard legendary to make as a commander. But in this deck, it's just like Shieldred. On a player's upkeep, they're being forced to lose life. Granted, you're giving them cards, but you're getting cards out of your own commander every time, and you're also, if it survives a turn cycle, getting more cards. Going on down, we have Doth the Voidwalker. We're moving away from the burning creatures. This is a utility piece. There is a few equipments in the deck. And having a shadow creature holding on to the equipment is always a fantastic thing to have. Basically just one of the best generic filler cards that has been printed in the past like 10 years. Any black splash deck, you have to make an actual reason not to run Dothy. And of course we have the land ramp dudes. These three are fantastic. Of any non-green deck, being able to recur them with a reanimation spell. The Canoptic Wraith is like a worse Burnished Heart because it has to go through combat to be allowed to trigger, but it can't be blocked. So you have a sort of the Animist effect on it. You can use him to get extra damage in. But these are here just to help us get lands of. This is Russian, this is Solemn Simulacrum. If you're unfamiliar with the artwork, really don't know why you wouldn't know that artwork. Moving on down, we have 2 more creatures to go. Archfiend of Depravity is a placeholder. This is just a very amusing card. This doesn't necessarily do anything for the deck. My deck has a weird tutor that tutors for demons. So we have a Season, we have the Cardor, and we needed more, like at least one more demon to really wrap up the package. And this is like a board wipe demon, kinda. We really only need 1 or 2 creatures in play. So even if this somehow gets cloned or thefted, it will not backfire on us. But this is a good way of keeping a token player in check, someone trying to go wide. Finally, we have the most mana cost expensive card in the deck. There is one other 6-drop in the deck. It's an Embercleave, which means that Godo will go get the Embercleave. The mana value and curve of this deck is very low. But Godo's here again, we have an equipment package of the ramp swords. Any red splash deck running those sort of the Animist type effects, there's very little reason not to run Godo. It is just an efficient package that can help you get further into the game. Let's stick the creatures over here and go on to the biggest chunk of the deck, which is instances. It is always entertaining in EDH to run Lightning Bolt if your deck actually can make use of it. Our deck can. So the worst case scenario is if we have our Valgavoth in play, this is just going to be 3 damage to a random opponent on their turn to trigger Valgavoth so we can cantrip and draw a card. But this format has so many utility things that die to Lightning Bolt. Bolt the Bird is the phrasing for killing the turn 1 mana dork from a broken deck, but anything from like the Magistrate that prevents you from casting your commander, all these low mana cost, low toughness, techie commanders that are just really pushed. Dying to Lightning Bolt is fantastic. It is a good and fun card to run. Next we have, I'm showing my age here. I started again playing in the Visions Mirage block. If you're a fan of my channel, you know I had this passion, this stupid passion for the diamonds, like the Fire Diamond, Charcoal Diamond, and all that. That was because I grew up in that era. I learned to play in Type 2 in that era standard. And the goal was to get Discordant Spirit on turn 3, which is a 4-mana card, which required diamonds on turn 2. But this card came out in Mirage. It is a funny card, and there's a almost reprint of it from the Invasion set, Backlash. These tap down a creature. This one has to be on an opponent's turn. This one has to be an untapped creature. But they are basically making an opponent's creature deal its own damage to that owner. Very funny if they're playing Blightsteel Colossus or Infect. We have some more. These are all basically burn instant speed spells to trigger Valgavoth, if you haven't noticed. Guess Verdict is an instant, makes a player sack a creature, but more importantly, they lose a life, which will cantrip off of Valgavoth. We have Hideous End. Boy, this is a bad card. This is a card that has not aged well, and it was basically bulk trash at the time of its own creating. This is a 3-mana Doomblade with an attached target player its controller loses 2 life. It can only hit non-black creatures. There was a card in here I recently cut from the Warhammer set called Kill, Maim, Destroy, or something like that. It was a 5-mana instant, destroys a creature, an artifact, and does 3 damage to something. But that was replaced because 5 mana was pretty steep. But that was the kind of effect we're looking at here, because we have destroys a creature, and if I control an artifact, I do 3 damage to its controller. We have a chunk of mana rocks in here. This almost always does damage. We have destroys a creature and its controller loses life. This could be cheaper if the creature was dealt damage this turn. Is that how that works? Yeah, that rarely happens. This is basically a 4-mana removal spell that cantrips with our commander. Not exactly powerful, but is synergistic enough to keep itself in the deck. Same thing, Suspend Sentence. This one's an awkward one because it continually will put itself on Suspend, but there has to be a target if it comes off Suspend. So it's a removal spell, again, 4 mana, destroys a creature, they lose 3 life, then you put it back on Suspend. So every 3 turns you can do it again. Realistically, people will learn to play around this and just make it so there's no legal target for this when it comes off of exile. Agonizing Demise is another type of like Delirium Backlash spell where 4 mana removal really sucks. But for 6 mana, you're removing it but also making it deal damage equal to its power to its controller. 6 mana is very steep, but that is a significant chunk of damage depending on what your opponents are playing. There's a lot of big creatures, anything from like an Avacyn just smacking its owner in the face for 8, even though you're not killing it. 8 mana or 8 damage burn spell is actually very relevant. Smash to Smithereens is an artifact destruction with a little bit of damage built in to cantrip off of Valgavoth. Rakdos Charm is potentially damage, but is also utility in graveyard hate or artifact destruction. This is typically withheld in hand to kill a token player. All too frequently, people will overextend and try to swarm the board, especially if your deck is built around one very large creature. You will die to small creature strategies. So this is one of the best cards to have in this deck, and I do believe that set symbol means it was in the precon. Arc Bond is one of my favorite cards in this deck. Now, last time I ran this was when I was doing Camber and Lauren, the partners, because any kind of lifelink in a black deck that has access to red and Arc Bond means you can typically go over 100 life every time you see this card. I don't think I have lifelink in this deck, but Arc Bond is a phenomenal card when you tend to have a creature that tends to grow very, very big. Because someone's going to chump block the creature. Someone might do a Hail Mary swing into you with multiple cards, knowing that you're going to block one of them. But what you're looking to do is to find the creature that's going to be dealing the most damage, and then Arc Bond onto the creature that is being dealt that damage. So that usually means this is a situational instant speed board wipe, but it hits players, including ourselves. Again, if you can find ways of giving the creature that this is targeting lifelink, that means whoever owns that creature is going to gain an obscene amount of life. This is a very funny card. I would always recommend it. It's one of those gotcha cards. You can't run a deck with just gotcha cards because they will not always work out. But when they do work out, boy, is it funny. Let's go on down. We have Kolaghan's Command. This is a choose 2. So there is a damage to 2 player, or creature really, but we're here to use that extra bit for cantrip. It could be a graveyard recursion or discard. Most likely this is an artifact destruction and 2 damage to a player to cantrip off our commander. We have another little bit of graveyard hate. There seems to be a lot of random graveyard hate in this deck, anything from the Dothy to the Rakdos Charm, but this is an X burn spell that removes cards from an opponent's graveyard. I mean, I don't think we can hit our own, right? Yeah, you can hit your own graveyard if you really need to, but this is an instant speed spell. So, worst case scenario with our commander out, we have 2 mana invested, X equals 1 plus a black, to exile 1 card, make that player lose 1 life, we gain 1 life, we put a counter and draw off of Valgavoth. Late game, this can nuke an entire player's graveyard. Electrodominance is an instant speed targeted burn spell, so you can target a creature, but realistically we're using this to hit an opponent and give anything in our deck flash. So flashing out a Godo at the end of an opponent's turn is terrifying. That's a very good way to end the game. Going on down, we are done with the burn spells, but we have a few techie spells. Things people really do like killing Valgavoth. That's the biggest problem when coming to playing the known commanders. People know how much of a threat this is. They know the antics. They've seen the precon. They know what's going to happen. So he dies often. There are a lot of spells like this that you can use to put in here. Some of them just are better than others. Some of them are unplayable. For example, Undying Evil, the Undying spells in general, only work if a creature has no counter. So don't give him Undying. That does not work. But I like this one. This one gives it a little bit of a boost, and when it comes into play, you can use this on like a Burnished Heart. If you want to sacrifice your Burnished Heart or your Canoptic Wraith, get a little bit of extra value. The other one I really like is Rush of Vitality. It gives lifelink, so I could try to combo that with Arc Bond. This is indestructible. It does not return it from the graveyard. So if someone tries to make me sack it, we're good. If someone tries to destroy him, we're good. Again, there's a lot of other versions of this. I think I have one more in here. Yes, I have to have Seb McKinnon's artwork in every deck I play. His artwork is fantastic. Grim Return is one of my favorite cards. Just look at that change. Like, this is so mood. I love that card. But the idea is the same. If the creature, any creature, our commander or something on the opponent's side were to die, we can snag it right out of the graveyard. I think Kaya's Ghost form is an enchantment. Is it the Ghost form? There's one that's a singular black enchantment that can return something from exile. That's very good. There's the MDFC Malakir Rebirth that's very commonly played. I would always recommend, if you're playing a known threat of a commander, you should have some kind of effect like this. If you're playing blue and you don't have black, do like a Ghostly Flicker effect. Essence Flux, like the 1 mana one to flicker it out. That'll save you from spot removal. These effects, you don't want to overwhelm the deck, but if they are synergistic with other cards in the deck that have ETB values, like a Godo or a Burnished Heart you want to rebuy, then that can help you get into the later game. Going on down, we have a 1 of Dark Ritual. We really do like seeing Valgavoth early. He is a card advantage engine sometimes. Sometimes you're in a casual game when no one's playing fetch lands, and he actually just will not get counters. But seeing an option for him earlier is very good. This could have been a Jeweled Lotus if that card were not banned. A Mana Crypt, same thing. Things that would allow you to play Valgavoth on turn 2 is a Dark Ritual. We have 1 extra combat effect in the deck past Godo, which is the Great Train Heist. This is a fun one because it allows us to also sometimes make treasures. The utility on this card is actually very unique, and I really do enjoy it. I'm enjoying the Insatiable Avarice, the black tutor that also costs 1, and it makes me really want to build another Ad Nauseam deck, because seeing these cards, this utility package on a 1 mana spell appear, that just screams Ad Nauseam. But this is an Attacking's Matter deck, so all these extra utility options, giving us whichever one or more that we have access to or need, is very good. Going on, we have 2 non-burn removal spells. These are basic remnants of my old collection. These have been sitting in my binder untouched for a while. Again, Sab McKinnon artwork. We gotta love it. We gotta save it. My player rewards cards from way back when. I do miss the system of having cards mailed to me. I used to have decks dedicated and built entire around this. If you watched my channel about 1.5 years ago, I had a Grixis deck, which was all just textless cards. It was Solkanar the Swamp King. That was a bad deck. But these are here as fillers. These could be anything. The Kill Maim Warhammer card could be this one. It costs 5 mana. And literally I could put like an Incinerate, the burn for 3 in here to replace this one, just a cantrip off our commander. So easily exchangeable for just better options. Now, there's only a handful of sorceries in the deck. As you saw, that entire stack was all instances. So this is kind of a control deck. But there's a few sorceries. This could be a demonic tutor. But we're playing a flavorful tutor here. This has Valgavoth floating in the background, a little bit of flavor text. It searches for a demon, but if we have Delirium, we can get any card we want. We have a good way of getting Delirium in this deck since we have a few artifact creatures and art instances and fetch lands to go. But, again, there's an awkward number of game changers. I think I have 2 in the deck, which means I have room for 1 more game changer, if I so cared. I don't care. So I'm keeping this one for flavor reasons. Going on, we have a damage doubler. Very quickly, Valgavoth will get over 10 power, which means that any sort of damage amplification spell, if you run a double strike spell, like Assault Strobe or whatever the better... Temur Battle Rage, I'm showing my age again, goddamn. Assault Strobe was from Scars of Mirrodin. Temur Battle Rage came out in one of the cons blocks, and it is significantly better, so I don't know why I would even bother saying Assault Strobe. Please kill me. I can feel myself sometimes just turning to dust. It's like that scene from Terminator 2 where Sarah Connor's holding onto the fence, and her body is just ratcheted into dust. Sometimes when I say some ghetto shit dating myself, we're tangenting. Okay. I swear I'm not ADHD. Damage doublers are very good if your commander has the potential to get over 10 power. So, very quickly, within 2 turn cycles, if your deck's doing what it wants to do, Valgavoth will be at least 11 power, which means any damage doubler means you have a one-shot kill potential. I like this one a lot because it is a spell. This is kind of a spellslinger deck, but it is also a burn spell from the graveyard. So in a very late game, we can use this to cantrip off of Valgavoth. We have Allure of the Unknown, a 3rd Seb McKinnon artwork card. This should not be in the deck. I'm letting you know right now, do not run this card in this deck specifically. We have a pile of removal and control spells. So while this is normally a 5 mana, draw 5, what is really happening here is you're giving your best card to your opponents, which is probably going to be a removal spell to kill something of yours. This should be any other draw effect. This could be like a Moonlight Bargain, a Sign in Blood, or anything like that. I like this card because I had it in my binder. I am slowly emptying my binder into my decks, and this card found its way in here. We have some wipes in Toxic Deluge. I don't know if I like this Commander's mono black set symbol and the artwork compared to like the other artworks of this card. We got this mainly because it had Yawgmoth quotes down here, which was pretty. And we are staying on flavor with Valgavoth by having the Valgavoth Damnation. It's fun verbiage to use in your deck is when this Valgavoth is dead and you're complaining about him dying so much that his commander cost is 6 or 8 or 10 or however much, and you rip this, you can say, well, I'm going to cast the other 4 mana Valgavoth, the Damnation. Final spell in the deck is a sorcery for Chandra's Ignition. Once again, Valgavoth tends to get very big very fast. If you start impounding like more than 10 power on him, and you do anything to damage amp him up, where he starts doing double damage, or if you give him lifelink with the other thing, or just there's so many cards that this card is very good with, like even the Brash Taunter. It's just a way of wiping creatures and players out of the game. Let's go on to a few enchantments. A very generic, not necessary, but generically good inclusion in a black splash deck is a random reanimation spell. This could be any reanimation spell. It could be a necromancy. It could be reanimate. It could be zombify. We had access to one of these in my binder, we shoved it in the deck, and it's still good enough to be here. We have what would be expected to be in a Valgavoth deck. This is one of the reasons that Dark Ritual is funny in this deck, because we can Dark Ritual this out on turn 1, which really messes up a lot of people's game plans. Turn 2 Valgavoth off Dark Ritual is a probably better play, but for the memes, this one's funny. This is what you would expect to see in a Valgavoth deck, a permanent that periodically does damage consistently over the game, and it is good enough to stay here. And finally, we have the Meat Hook Massacre, the second one. The first Meat Hook Massacre is still a wildly expensive card. This one is actually very good and on par for what the deck is wanting to do. We can use it to sack our own things and get them back with a finality counter. More importantly, the pay 3 life aspect happens whenever an opponent's creature dies. It doesn't have to be when this is coming into play. So if someone else's creature dies on their own turn, or someone else's turn, it will trigger life loss effects. And depending on whose turn it was, it may work with Valgavoth. I don't think this was in the pre-con. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if this is in the pre-con or not, but this fits perfectly with Valgavoth and what this deck is trying to do. Let's go through the artifacts next. Let's start with the mana rocks, because those are the easiest ones to explain. There's not a lot other unique tech in this deck. It's basically mana rocks, equipment, and lands. But as you would expect a non-green deck, we're playing away first bauble to fix our colors. Again, this is a stupid card that should not be in the deck. This is here because Mana Crypt should be in the deck if it were not banned. Mana Crypt allows for an earlier Valgavoth, like a turn 2 Valgavoth. It is banned for obvious reasons, because realistically, in most metas, people can't afford that card. But Soul Talisman is hilarious. This is just a bad card. What happens here? Suspend 3 means I cast this from my hand, and 3 turns later it comes into play. What usually happens is someone will board wipe or Cyclonic Rift or bounce this back to my hand as a joke. And that's literally what happens every single time this comes in. Like, it is such a bad card. It is in here for a reason, because my deck tends to draw a lot of cards. Like a whole bunch. The curve on the deck is very low, and a lot of mana rocks, you do want to sequence out like your arcane signets into your plays to keep your mana open, but sometimes just you don't want to discard, and this is a 1 mana, you will eventually get its spell. It could maybe just be a Cabal ritual, maybe a Seething Song, or some other ritual so you can make a bigger play. But again, we had this, we've been sitting on it for a while, we had no reason to play it. So we just shoved it into a sleeve for this deck. Let's go on. We have, obviously, the Soul Ring to go with the Soul Talisman. The second game changer in the deck that doesn't really need to be in the deck. This enables another turn 2 Valgavoth. This is financially a very expensive card that is about more expensive than everything else in the deck. But allowing a turn 2 Valgavoth is the reason it's here. I don't know. I have issues with the bracket list, the game changer list. This is absolutely up there, but it's really weird seeing that these 2 cards are right next to each other, and this is still not considered a game changer when we all know it is. I think it's just the financial exposure and the expectancy of this being an EDH staple. While this has also been printed now, I believe, 9 times total. There's Alpha Beta, the revised, there's the foreign black border ones, there's Collectors International. There's about 3 different box topper promos, Modern Master. I think there's over 10 printings of this, but this is still $100. It's like Mana Crypt. It probably should have just been outright banned, because it just makes bad feels. But, going on down, I need to stop tangenting. I swear my brain's ADHD today. We have more 2-drop mana rocks. This is very good if you have a 4 mana costing commander, because if you play a 2-drop mana rock on turn 2, that means if you're playing your lands correctly on turn 3, you will have your commander. We have the Felwar Stone and a Rakdos Signet. The last 2 mana rocks in here are still placeholders. Not really, they are just right from my binder. Cards that I could upgrade, I'm not going to upgrade. These are cards from my childhood. I have another pair of these in my KZ card deck as well. I just have a passion for them. They are sneaky, manipulative mana rocks, because people will forget or think that you are tapped out. If you are completely tapped out with your lands and your mana rocks, everything sideways, technically you still have access to a black and a red, because you can sack these when they're tapped for mana. So if your deck is running random cheap reanimation or removal spells, something like the Malakir Rebirth or even a Terminate, your opponents might think you're tapped out, but you have the mana right here. These are not something I would actually recommend you play. I am playing these for nostalgic reasons. I have a love for my old cards, but they have their use. They've had their time. The other few artifacts in the deck are the equipment package, as you would expect in a non-green deck piloted by moi. We have Sword of the Animist, we have Bitterthorn. These are fantastic cards to see early game. If you have a Godo and nothing else going on, and you snap one of these on a Godo, you're going to get very far in the game. Because he gives you an extra combat, which means you're extra ramping. The best of the three on Godo is Sword of Hearth and Home, because Sword of the Hearth and Home can flicker Godo to go get another one of these. And all of a sudden you're ramping and getting more equipment into play. Finally, well, there's two more. There's Mithril Coat. This is another one of those, like a Malakir Rebirth responsive kind of like interactive spells. When someone goes to kill Valgavoth, you're sandbagging this until the last possible moment. Silver Shroud Costume, the one from Fallout that gives Shroud, is equally as good, but this one being indestructible is really why we're playing it. This is a very expensive card financially, so it's very hard to recommend this. It is easier just to play more of those effects like the supernatural stamina, because it's giving you exactly the same effect. This one is just more of a permanent effect. The final equipment in the deck, as I mentioned, is Embercleave. There are some wonderful lines you can do if you are playing with Godo and Embercleave, specifically if you first start your sequence with Sword of Hearth and Home. Because if you put get Godo, go get Sword of Hearth and Home, if he survives to attack, and let's say you just have Valgavoth in play, you can go do your first combat, Godo will trigger. If he hits somebody, you can get your untapped land, and then you can flicker Godo. And if you're flickering Godo, that means he has another ETB trigger, and you can go grab an Embercleave and snap it right into play. And if this comes into play, it comes into play attached to a creature you control, just like Valgavoth. And oh wait, you have another combat, don't you? Looks like Valgavoth can attack with that Embercleave. Yeah, there's shenanigans afoot with Godo. There's a lot of combos with Godo, which is where he gets a lot of bad press from. But I would recommend, if you have Sword of the Animist and Bitterthorn as the bare minimum, and maybe two other equipments, just utility equipments, and red, go ahead and stick Godo in your deck. It is very good because he cheats the equipment into play for you. Now, before we get to the lands, as customary, every single one of my decks runs one Planeswalker. I do this for personal reasons. I've been doing this for a very long time. We do this because it gives us a sensation to want to protect that one Planeswalker, unless it's like a dedicated Planeswalker deck, which I haven't done since Crosis, which was... You have to go back to my channel to find that one. But this deck, there's not really a one that really works well with Valgavoth. Like, there is the Chandra that gives an emblem to all of your opponents, so every upkeep they burn. There's a few Chandras really that might work better, but I had access to this one about a year or two ago. If you watch my channel, you saw a friend that helped me come back out of a bit of a agoraphobic situation I was in. Got me a few fat packs, and he helped get me back into the game, and I got this off of him. This is such a beautiful card. I love Vraska. Most of the artworks of Vraska's Planeswalkers are just slightly awkward and not attractive, but this particular one is really attractive. I love this. I remember opening the fat packs on this channel and seeing the art card for this. This does not directly help the deck. I'm playing this because I have this card. It can proliferate counters. That is the closest that this card does to help the deck, is proliferating a counter. But I mean, it can be removal, and it has a very devastating effect if she is somehow allowed to survive. Let's move on down to the lands to wrap up the video. Now, this is a very odd thing. Not only am I playing a new commander that has card advantage built on, which is making me not my normal hipster self, I'm also playing a significant amount of non-basic lands. So we're in weird territory here, aren't we? Now, we do have the expected ones you would see in a non-green deck. We have the Myriad Landscape and a few fetchable lands and a few targets to get. So we have... Actually, I don't have a Bloodstained Mire in here. I took it out because I needed it in another deck. But we have the targets for a Bloodstained Mire. So that is probably something I need to get now that I'm realizing it. These 4 are non-basic swamp mountains that a Bloodstained Mire can go get. Let's get this in range here. This is a new one that if you have any reanimation strategy or flashback stuff like a Past in Flames in your deck, Surveil lands are very, very good. But each of these can be grabbed by a Bloodstained Mire or even a Rocky Tar Pit. None of those are in the deck, and I do need to get those back. We have an Urza's Cave. I've been shoehorning this into a few decks. This actually makes sense here. We have a few lands that help do damage with Valgavoth to get our cards. So here, this is here specifically to go get one of those lands. For example, one of the good techie lands we can do is to protect Valgavoth. This one is very expensive to activate, but it can be used to give a creature indestructible and hexproof until end of turn. Talon Gates is a very expensive land that I really hope they reprint. We need this to be reprinted in every Commander Precon. Please. Because you can activate this from your hand and cheat a land into play to ramp. But you can also use this to phase out your card, your commander, to save it from removal. Or you can phase out an opponent's creature, like a Voltron commander coming to kill you. And we can use Urza's Cave to pop this right into play. Going on down, we have the damaging lands. We have a Shivan Gorge. And we have a Leech-Ridden Swamp. This comes into play tapped. It has an activated ability. It only works if you have so many black permanents, but it's still good enough to run here. It is a fetchable swamp. So again, if you have a Bloodstained Mire, you can use that to get this land. We have another bit of Graveyard Hate and Recursion. I'm not going to try to pronounce this card's name. I know it's from the Assassin's Creed set. But this can be used to pick up a Sheoldred or some historic card in our graveyard while also being Graveyard Hate. We have a Scavenger Grounds as another piece of Graveyard Hate. I believe that's a total of 6 cards in my deck that just randomly hate graveyards. From Dothy Voidwalker to the X-Spell to the lands. That's not intentional. Rakdos Charm. That's not intentional. These are just generically good cards. And it's amusing to me that the generically good cards are so good nowadays that they have Graveyard Hate just attached. We have another burning land in Mount Doom. This is unfortunately going to hurt us as well. We have to pay a life to get the mana. It's like a Sulphur Springs. We have Witch's Clinic to give our commander lifelink. Valgavoth tends to get very, very big, very fast. Giving him lifelink is fantastic. You can play political games with this card and give other commander, like something you don't control, lifelink if you want an opponent to survive in combat. And finally, we have Arena of Glory, a haste land. Probably the best haste land printed of the, like there's the Flamekin Village. I really like Godo, the Hall of Bandalord land. And there's also the Handwire Battlement. I'm trying to remember what the card is called that it melds into. But this is the newest version of these haste. No, actually, the Amonkhet Speedway. There's a racing set that came out a month or 2 ago that has another card like this. But this comes into play in tap, and it taps for red mana. So in this deck, I believe this is the best. Let's go through the basics. As I've been mentioning in all my videos this past week, I've been holding on to and finally reutilizing my old basic lands. I quit the Magic in 2020. I saved 1 single deck and a binder full of basic foil lands I have been collecting because it did not make sense to sell those lands. There are equal amounts of mountains and swamps in here. These appear to be Mercadian Mask foils, but if you know what you're looking at, the size of the star right here, you know that these are not Mercadian Mask foils. This is actually an arena foil. I'm showing my age here by knowing random stupid trivia. It took me a long time to actually collect these because when I started collecting these, like 15 years ago, a lot of people did not know the difference between a Mercadian Mask foil and like an arena promo foil, and it was based on the size of the shooting star. But these are very old lands that we've had for a very long time. But this is my current Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls EDH. And I know this is the bizarre one for me, because not only am I playing a pre-con commander, I'm playing a known commander, one of the most common commanders in recent years that has card advantage built on. And I'm usually the hipster player. I'm the one playing the old stuff, the underdogs, the random cards that no one expects to see. Everyone knows about this card. It's a new card. It's a powerful card. It's a very pushed card. And I don't know how long I'm going to be able to maintain this list because I don't normally play the pushed cards. We're going to keep pushing him for a while because I do enjoy the games that this comes with. The chaos games of insult like double damage manipulation, arc bond effects, brash taunter. Oh, that's my wheelhouse. That's like the stuff I love. So we're going to keep playing with him. I don't know what I would change. Like, other than like strict upgrade of a removal spell with burn attached. I'm not sure what I would change in here. If you have any ideas, obviously I've seen the precon list. Obviously I keep up with EDH Rec. But if you have any unique ideas of those fun passive ways of burning an opponent that they cannot control or they might forget about, let me know, because that's the kind of card I would actually love to stick in this deck. But stay tuned. I just wrapped up my mono color decks. I think I'm halfway done, actually. I have another deck I'm going to try to do today, which is my CEDH deck. It's not really going to be a deck list. We're going to turn that into a game of finding the fake card. But stay tuned. I hope you all are enjoying the Pride Month and have a wonderful June. Cheers.